Toilet. Yeah, we use those to labor on. I don't know what this is, like the funky chick. I don't know what this is. Anyway, yap. It is time for my favorite position, which is did you guess it? If you're having a baby in like 9 months from now or tomorrow, did you know that you don't actually have to lay on your back with your feet up in stirrups if you don't want to? Well, you don't. It is time,
Simba,
to do a video all about the different positions you can utilize in labor and in childbirth that do not require you to be flat on your back with your legs in the stirrups, unless that is what you want. But guys, there are so many incredible positions that you can utilize to bring that baby down into your pelvis quicker and more efficiently, which means you're gonna meet your baby quicker and have them skin to skin and be all naked together. And I did one of these videos in the very beginning when I was just a wee baby YouTuber. It's time to just blow it out of the water and show you everything you need to know so you can make really informed choices and have the birthing experience that you want to have. And at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you my absolute favorite birthing position in the history of all birthing positions. Your pelvis is a flexible structure. I have one here. Hang on. Oh God. Hang on. Your pelvis is a flexible structure because of all of the hormones that you have floating around you now that you are pregnant, especially one called relaxin, which relaxes all of the muscles and the ligaments and the tendons to let you do things in birth that you probably wouldn't have done before. I don't know what this is, like the funky chick. I don't know what this is. Anyway, your pelvis is flexible, and what is also flexible is this sacrum back here. This is like your tailbone. It is meant to move. So when you are laying flat on your back in childbirth, your sacrum has nowhere to go. And if we utilize our bodies in a smart way, the way that they are designed to be used, we can get upright or semi-upright to allow this pelvis to move and flex and to allow this sacrum to get out of the way to give our baby even more room to come out and meet us that much quicker. And I'm not alone in these thoughts because the evidence actually agrees. It says if you don't have an epidural and you are upright and moving, then your uterus is able to contract stronger and more efficiently, and you're likely to perceive your pain levels as lower, and you're less likely to need things like a vacuum or a forceps delivery or an episiotomy. It also says that it's likely to shorten your second stage of labor, and you're less likely to need something like synthetic oxytocin to sort of nudge your labor along. Now that is for people without an epidural. The research on people with an epidural, it is less thorough and less conclusive, but I'm only going to assume that the human body is the human body, so likely being upright in labor with an epidural, and there's ways to do that, we'll talk about it later, is also really beneficial. Okay, I've been talking lots about laying on your back, yap. Let's talk first then about lithotomy. Let's get it out of the way. This is the one that you see very commonly in TV and in movies, and the mom is laying there and she's on her back and she's got her legs up by her ears, or they're in stirrups, and she's pouring sweat and she's screaming, and the doctor's there to catch the baby like a catcher at the Yankees. And thanks Hollywood for making everyone believe that this is the only way that you can birth a baby. Now, some people really enjoy the lithotomy position, and it works for a lot of people. So if you like it, I love it. And I find that this one's actually pretty good for people who have had multiple babies, because usually, and I say usually because like my fourth baby was the one that gave me the most trouble, but usually after you've had a baby or two, they come out pretty easy. So if you lay on your back and you pull your legs up a little bit, you can give a few pushes and you can have your baby. So it can be great for that. The pros of this position are that your provider has the most access to your perineum to protect it if that's what you're into, and also to visualize as your baby is crowning and being born, right? It's also going to be the easiest position for them to really accurately check the position of your baby if they're wondering what position your baby is coming out in. Are they facing the floor or are they facing the ground? And if we're honest, it's probably the most convenient position for them to give birth in. So there definitely are pros to lithotomy, but the big one here, is that it is not a flexible sacrum position. You're flat on your back, your sacrum has nowhere to go, and it leaves us the less amount of space for your baby to come out in. So in my opinion, there are better positions out there than lithotomy, and let's chat about all of them. The other thing to think about, when you're pregnant, they often say to you, don't lay on your back for long periods of time. And why is that? Because actually the weight of your baby and your belly, it can actually compress some of the vessels in your abdomen, which can decrease blood flow to you and decrease blood flow to baby. But then we're supposed to lay on our back for hours at a time. And yes, it can take hours for you to push a baby out. I don't know, that just seems counterintuitive to me. And the other thing that's counterintuitive is that if we look at history and other cultures, and women that give birth in places at home and in birth centers, you don't often see them laying flat on their back with their legs up by their ears or their legs in made stirrups, right? You usually see them upright or squatting or kneeling or doing something that feels natural to their body. And I'm going to give you a hint here. What feels good to your body when you're in labor is usually what your body needs to have your labor continue to progress and move forward. When you're laying flat on your back, you're actually working against gravity because the birth canal is shaped sort of like a J. You can see it comes like this, okay, when baby comes out. So when you are pushing on your back, there's going to come a point in time where you're actually pushing baby uphill because it's shaped like a J, right? So when you're laying on your back, you're working against gravity, which again, is counterintuitive. Okay. The first big position on the list is side lying. And it has a ton of pros, but in my mind, the biggest pro of this one is that it's a completely restful position, meaning you're laying on your side and you can rest between contractions. And not only that, you're not supporting your body weight on your upper body or on your legs, like in some of the other positions we're going to talk about in the video. So in that way, it's also very restful. And another big pro is that this is good to use without an epidural, but it's also good and safe to use with an epidural. Like even if you have the world's heaviest epidural and you can't use your legs.
Well, you ain't got no legs, Lieutenant Dan.
And by the way, that is not the purpose of an epidural, but even if your epidural does that, side lying is very safe because you're 100% supported by the bed. Another pro is that for providers, it still gives them a nice view of your perineum so that they can accurately check your dilation and check your baby's position, and they can see your baby as they're crowning and protect your perineum and assist in the birth and in a position that's not as complicated as some of the other positions, so that's really nice. Also, you are not on your back, so you don't have the big tummy on top, which doesn't decrease that flow through the umbilical cord like it might if you were laying flat on your back. And of course, the biggest pro, when you're not flat on your back, this sacrum is actually flexible and it can move to allow your baby to come through that birth canal so much easier. So those are all the big pros of side lying. There's not really a ton of cons. You can labor in this position and you can also give birth in this position because that top leg, you can bring it back and lift it up with your hand. You can lay it on a stirrup if it's quite heavy. You can have your bottom leg bent. You can have your bottom leg straight. There's a lot of things that you can do in a bed in a side lying position. And I see it a lot because a lot of my patients in the hospital do end up with epidurals. My name is Tina. I'm a labor and delivery nurse with my certification in perinatal nursing. If you are new here, welcome, welcome. And if you are not new, welcome back. Let's get right back into it because I love talking about positions that you can give birth in. Let's go with another big one here. Let's talk about kneeling and squatting next. Kneeling and squatting, they are completely upright birthing positions, meaning you are taking the powers of gravity and you are using them to your advantage to move your baby down and out. And not only that, it takes that pressure off of your back and spine, and it can open up the pelvis by upwards of like 1 to 2 centimeters extra, which is actually like pretty mind-blowing if you think about it. And it keeps the sacrum flexible. It is able to move back and forth to accommodate your baby coming through it. And without the epidural, you can squat out of the bed as well. You can still use your partner or the furniture to support you, or you can get creative and you can use a sling or a scarf or a blanket to do some squatting and swaying. The squatting positions we just talked about, those ones might be better suited for somebody without an epidural, because if you have an epidural, it can be really, really fatiguing to hold up your own body weight on your leg muscles while also trying to let your body relax to let labor progress forward. But if you don't have an epidural, you can get really creative. Like I said, you can use almost anything to support you, or you can use a birthing chair or a birthing stool if your facility has one, or all facilities will have this, toilet. Yeah, we use those to labor on. It's like a squatting position. We call it the dilation station. It's actually really effective for a couple of reasons. One is that you're sort of in a semi-squat, but your pregnant body weight, it is being supported by the toilet, but there's not a lot of pressure on your perineum because of the big bowl that is there, right? You can actually lean onto the toilet like this and be more restful while you are sitting on the dilation station. And you can actually put a foot or a leg up on a stool to give your pelvis almost a diagonal position to allow the mid pelvis to open a little bit. You can do that with a birthing chair as well. So get creative with it. Think about all of the ways that you could be in a squatting position while not necessarily holding up your entire body weight. Oh, hey, one more thing about squatting to remember. You're utilizing gravity to its absolute maximum force, right? So it's very likely that you're going to need less of your own efforts to bring your baby down and out. But you are taking gravity and your force, and sometimes they join up and they're a lot more powerful than we realize. So the chances of perineal tears they are slightly elevated in a squatting position. Then there's supported kneeling. I love this one. I think it is super effective and really comfortable, and it feels super natural. I did this one with my fourth baby. With this one, you are kneeling on the bed, and then you're either leaning up over the back of the bed for support, or you can drop the foot of the bed and then you can lean onto the bed for support. Again, this one is safe with an epidural because in either of them, you are completely supported by the bed. Next position is Tug of War, where we're using a towel or a blanket to sort of serve up some counter pressure as you are pushing your baby down and out. Now this counter pressure, it is going to help you to engage your core and your back muscles, and yes, they are still there and they are still functioning as you pull yourself up, and that's going to help you to direct that pushing effort in a downward motion, which is the motion that we need to help your baby to be born. This can be done with a sheet around a squat bar and using that as your traction, or you can give the sheet to your partner or the nurse and they can pull away when you pull yourself up and into the push. And honestly, having your partner involved is a really great way to feel connected in your birth experience, because a lot of times our partners aren't really sure what to do or they feel pretty helpless. So all around, this one's great. For some people in their labor, they're going to get to fully dilated or 10 centimeters dilated, but they're not going to feel that strong urge to push their baby out yet. It's usually caused by your baby being a little bit higher up in the pelvis, right? And for these people, laboring down might be appropriate, meaning you're going to allow your uterus to do more work for you, to keep contracting and bring that baby down. And then when you feel that pressure, usually in your bum, you're going to start pushing your baby out. And a lot of times, if you labor down, you might find that you push your baby out in a shorter amount of time, and maybe you're a little bit less fatigued when you have your baby in your arms or on your chest. There are some risks identified by ACOG for laboring down. I will list them here for you. But if you're going to labor down, this is where I'm going with this, the throne position is a really effective position to be in to allow your body to do some of this work for you, and you can be a little bit more rested when you're ready to start pushing. Basically, it sounds like it is. You are sitting on a throne or a bed or a chair, allowing your body to do that work for you. Another position that is more well suited for somebody without an epidural, actually with an epidural, this one would be completely off of the table, but it is standing. And yes, you can stand and birth your baby, absolutely, because you are harnessing the powers of gravity once again. And when you are standing and moving around and swaying and doing the things that make it feel good, your pelvis is free to flex and move to allow your baby to engage. And it is a flexible sacrum position, which means we can maximize the amount of space down here for baby to be able to pass through with more ease and with less effort from you. And all of the benefits that we talked about earlier of upright birthing positions, they apply to standing, absolutely. That uterus is able to contract more efficiently, your baby has more room, and you're gonna perceive less pain, and you have less chances of those things that we talked about of forceps or vacuums or episiotomy. With standing though, we do have that slight increased risk of perineal tearing because again, you have your efforts and you have gravity working together, which can be pretty powerful. And some providers may not be comfortable with standing because of course they want to make sure that they are there to catch your baby, and it's probably a position that they are a little bit less familiar with. But if we look to other cultures and other times in the world, there it is. Lots of people standing to have their babies because it feels natural and it probably feels good. And remember, if it feels good, then it's what your body needs. And as promised, it is time for my favorite position, which is did you guess it? 100% all fours. All fours is just like a really nice natural feeling position. There's a ton of variations you can go through while you're in all fours, and it has a ton of pros, which of course I'm going to tell you about because I love all fours. One of the biggest pros in my mind is that it takes that pressure off of your back and spine and really helps with back labor. And as a back labor survivor, I can tell you all fours is just a miracle. Also, it takes that pressure off of the vessels within your abdomen, so it increases flow and oxygenation to the baby. And this is, of course, a flexible sacrum position, meaning this sacrum can move as it needs to accommodate your baby and make more space in this pelvic outlet to allow them to engage and come down just really more efficiently. And like I said, it is really versatile. You can move through a bunch of different variations on all fours once you're in it. Like you can be over a birthing ball, you can be over a peanut ball, you can have your knees in, you can have your knees out, and you can do lots of hip motions. You can do cat-cow, you can do hip circles, you can do back and forth, lots of things you can do to get your pelvis moving to allow baby to engage. There's a few other cool things as well. When you're in all fours, gravity is actually neutral. So it's not really speeding up your pushing efforts, but it's also not slowing down your efforts. So you have a lot more control over how you push. And then remember, when we were flat on our back towards the end, we're working against gravity. up the J, right? Well, when you're in all fours, you are now working with gravity down the J. So that can be really, really helpful. Another big pro is that if you're part of the hemorrhoids club, which are now raging because you've been pushing this baby out, it takes the pressure off of them. And this is one of the best positions if your baby is in an OP position or facing the sky and you want to sort of get them to turn and face the ground. All fours is going to be the one that's probably going to get it done for you because it makes the most amount of room in that pelvis. So really, it's just a great overall position. As you're preparing for your baby's birth, you may have heard of something called knees in pushing. This is a newer school of thought within the obstetrical communities, but it actually makes a lot of sense. And it says that when you have your knees out, it actually opens up the top part of your pelvis and allows your baby to engage in the top part. So this would be kind of earlier in labor when baby is higher up. But then as your baby drops down and comes lower and lower, if you change your knees from out to in, it's actually going to open up the bottom part of your pelvis, which is the part of your pelvis you want to make the most room in as your baby is sort of coming down and out. And let me show you how that is going to work. You see this. When we put our knees out, this is what our pelvis is going to do. The top of our pelvis here is going to open, okay, and make more room here. You see how this is getting wider. And of course, your pelvis isn't going to move this intensely and this dramatically, but for these purposes, we'll show you this way. So knees out are going to look kind of like this, okay? But look at what happens to the bottom of your pelvis when you do your knees out. It gets narrower. And that's totally fine in early labor because we want baby to come in the top of the pelvis, right? Now let's switch it up and do knees in. So let's say you've done all of the amazing work and your baby has come right down low. When we put our knees in, the top of the pelvis, which it doesn't really matter as much now because baby's already gone through it, is going to get narrower, right? But what's really important here is that this part of your pelvis, the bottom part where your baby is now coming through to be born, if you put your knees in, it is going to get wider and it is going to make more space for baby to come through and allow them to come through a little bit easier. So read up on knees in pushing, chat with your provider, see what they have to say about it, and if it works for you and you guys are being a team and you're figuring it out, then give that a go. Listen, bottom line is this. When you're giving birth, you have the right to be in whatever position feels intrinsically best to you. And you're not going to know what that position is until you're right in the middle of it. And it's likely not going to be one position for the entire birth experience. It's going to change as your situation ebbs and flows. And that's totally okay because what feels good to you is what your body needs. Remember that. If you like this one, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing and go ahead and check out this other video for lots of evidence-based birth information. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.